Good evening and welcome to the Coon Rapids City Council meeting for Tuesday, February 19th, 2019. If you could please rise and join us for the pledge. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Please call the roll.
Councilmember Kraskowiak.
Here.
Councilmember Kicker.
Here.
Councilmember Demmer.
Here.
Councilmember Geisler. Councilmember Johnson.
Here.
Councilmember Wells.
Here.
Mayor Cook.
Here.
One absent, Geisler.
Thank you. Next item on our agenda is to adopt this evening's agenda.
Your Honor,
Councilmember Demmer.
move to adopt the agenda, striking item 1.
Second.
Motion by Demmer, second by Kicker to adopt the agenda, striking item 1. Is there any discussion? Hearing none, all in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Opposed? And that motion carries. That brings us up to item 2 then, which is the approval of the minutes of the previous meeting.
Your Honor,
Councilmember Wells.
move to approve the minutes.
Second.
Motion by Wells, second by Demmer to approve the minutes of the February 5th, 2019 meeting. Any discussion or corrections? Hearing none, all in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Opposed? And those are approved. And we have 4 items on our consent agenda this evening. The first item is to adopt Resolution 19-33, requesting an advance of state aid funding for the 2019 street reconstruction program. Each year, the city receives approximately $2.7 million from the state gas tax administered through MnDOT, which is deposited into the city's MSA Street Fund, and these funds are available for construction and maintenance of MSA streets within the city, including the city's share of county state aid highway projects. To continue improving the condition of our collector street system, staff is proposing to reconstruct approximately 2.3 miles of MSA streets in 2019. If approved by the state, these advanced funds totaling $4 million will be available for use by the city in 2019, interest-free. The city remains about 1 year ahead in our advanced funding requests, so future improvements may be restricted and/or require additional advances. The MSA streets proposed for reconstruction in 2019 are Foley Boulevard from 115th Avenue to 124th Lane, Wedgewood Drive from Round Lake Boulevard to Main Street, and Olive Street from 121st Avenue to Main Street. So with this, we will be adopting resolution number 19-33, requesting advance of MSA funding for the 2019 street reconstruction program. Next item on the consent agenda is to adopt resolution 19-34, calling for a public hearing to vacate street and utility easement located at Foley Boulevard and 101st Avenue. The vacation is being considered to accommodate the construction of the self-storage building, and the building will be located within the portion of the easement that is proposed to be vacated. So we'll be adopting resolution 19-34, which calls for a public hearing on March 19th, 2019 for a vacation of the street and utility easement. Next item on our consent agenda is to receive the 2018 year-end gambling expenditure report. Staff has received and reviewed the semi-annual reports for July 1st through December 31st, 2018, showing gambling expenditures within the city of Coon Rapids and trade area for the 7 organizations at 14 locations. The combined net profit this period was reported at $768,126.46, with expenditures within the trade area, which includes the city of Coon Rapids, reported at $580,839.92. The reported expenditures specifically within the city of Coon Rapids for this period was $543,983.92. All organizations achieved the 60% expenditure requirement within the trade area for the year, with the exception of one, and a notice has been sent to the organization outlining the code requirements. So with this, we'll be receiving the gambling expenditure report for the second half of 2018. And then item 6 on this evening's agenda, which is the last item on our consent agenda, is to receive the lawful gambling report and authorize payment to Community Strength Foundation. The city collects 5% of all lawful gambling revenue generated within the city. The city council has agreed to disperse 90% of the charitable gambling revenue the city collects to the Community Strength Foundation. In 2018, the total lawful gambling contribution to the city equaled $69,172.21, making the 90% contribution equal to $62,254.99. The 2018 cumulative fund balance for this account is $30,574.30. In addition to this amount, the cumulative fund balance for the annual TC Gateway Grant is $13,299.90 for a combined total of $43,874.20. As authorized by the state statute and directed by council in 2012, these funds may be used for projects deemed appropriate by city council. So with this, we'll be accepting the 2018 5% lawful gambling payments report and authorize the expenditure of $62,254.99 to the Community Strength Foundation. When we do our taxes, we get to round those off. How come we can't round any of these off? So that's the consent agenda. Councilmember Kicker?
I make a motion that we approve the consent agenda.
Second.
Motion by Kicker, second by Demmer to adopt the consent agenda. Any discussion? Hearing none, all in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye, opposed, and the consent agenda is adopted or approved. We are on to item 7, which appears to be the first of 4 Mark Hansen shows. We're looking at holding a public and assessment hearings and consider resolutions 19-1 sub 6A, ordering project, and 19-1 sub 8, approving plans and specifications. Did that give you enough time to walk up there?
Yes, it did.
Perfect.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor and City Council. I just have a short PowerPoint presentation. What I will do is I'll present slides that are pertinent to all the different projects, and then we'll step into each individual project. I'll turn it back over to you to hold the public in the assessment hearing, and then we'll answer any questions, and then we'll move on to the next project. So project background, for all of the projects that we're talking about here tonight, the streets were rated as either deficient or poor condition in the spring of 2018. They all range from 20 to 46 years old in age, and staff, when we look at streets that we're proposing for reconstruction, we look at where we're spending the most time for our maintenance activities, where we're spending the largest amount for pothole repairs. So each year, or every other year, the engineering staff goes out, we review the different streets, and we look at street cracking, how much potholes are present, the wearing of the seal coat, and then the quality of the ride. We also look at the areas where we're spending a lot of time on maintenance, and then additionally, we look at the concrete tri-sections or areas that we spent a lot of time doing edge milling. So the process for how we rate pavements, when the street starts with longitudinal cracking, it's considered to be in good or fair condition. Then we start to see block cracking. City streets have a lot of manholes and valves on them, so we start to get what we call block cracks. That's a fair condition street. And then when streets fall into the poor condition, that's when you see alligator cracking in the lower left side of the screen, and then finally you get potholes. So the project schedules that are consistent for all the different projects that we're talking about tonight. We had an open house meeting on November 27th of last year, and then another one on January 29th. The one on January 29th was taped by our cable television, so if you didn't get a chance to be there for that presentation, you can go on our city website and you can watch it. It's got a lot more detail about the specifics of each of the projects.
And we don't blame anybody for missing that second meeting. Was it really cold or was it snowy? I don't remember.
It was really cold.
It's like 25 below
Yeah.
or something.
Yep, yep. So here we are tonight, February 19th, we're holding the public hearing and the assessment hearing. We would ask that the council approve the plans and then order advertisement for bids. The next key date is May 7th. Assuming that the council will adopt the assessments on May 7th, property owners will then be able to pay their assessment for 30 days interest-free if that's the way they choose to pay it. But we won't be able to collect any payments for the assessment until the assessments are adopted, which will happen on May 7th. Then we will have another round of open house or neighborhood meetings in middle of May. At that point, we'll have a contractor on board, we'll have schedules that we can provide to people, and we'll hold those in a neighborhood park, and we'll get really into the details in terms of schedule and specifics that people have in terms of concerns that they might have about access or impacts to their driveway. And we'll get postcards, there will be letters out in advance of that. The projects are scheduled or will be scheduled in general between May and October, but specifically each grouping of streets will be less than that, and that information will be available on the schedules that come out in May. And of course, if people want to sign up for weekly updates, each Friday we send out an update on what we expect, generally what we expect for work to happen the following or the upcoming week. And you can get an email notification of exactly when that update is available. You can go on our website and sign up for that anytime. Project costs, the 19-1 project, total cost is estimated at $3.5 million. Be paid for, all of these projects would be paid for from a variety of different city funds. 19-2, $4.5 million. However, funded primarily from our use of MSA funds. 19.3 would total at $3.6 million, and then 19.4, the city's share, this is a border street with the city of Anoka. The city's share would be approximately $200,000, and then each of the project would be also funded by assessments. The 2019 assessment rates are $2,070 for single-family residential. Duplex, townhomes, apartment properties are $26 a foot. Commercial properties are $52 a front foot, and then industrial properties are $67 a foot. Assessment payment options. So as I had indicated, the first option is between May 8th and June 8th if residents, property owners choose not or do not want to pay any interest. They have a 30-day window. They can pay the assessment off between that time and no interest would be charged. After June 8th, some amount of interest will be accruing at a rate of 3.5%, I believe. And then in the middle of November, that will get certified over to Anoka County, and you can pay that with your property taxes starting in 2019. The third option is you don't need to do anything, and you can pay your assessment off with your property tax bill. It would amount to about $250 a year for a single-family property in addition to your regular taxes. So why does the city assess? The property taxes pay for 50% of the street surfacing costs on these projects. That's how we've been doing it for the 20-plus years that we have been doing street reconstruction. And then special assessments pay off the rest of the 50% to the benefiting properties. Special assessments allow the city to raise money without increasing the overall general property taxes or city debt. Special assessments apply to properties that impact the road, but are exempt from taxation, so churches or schools that have impacts to our roads are also assessed. Even the city properties that impact the road are also assessed on these projects. And then just as a point of clarification, we do not assess for water, sewer, or drainage repairs. Those are the things, the utility improvements that you're paying for on your quarterly utility bill. So how are you going to be notified throughout construction? Periodically, residents or property owners will see pink tags show up on their door if there is a temporary water shutoff. So for residential properties, you'll be notified 24 hours in advance. It'll come through a pink tag that you see on the left side of your screen. And it's often put on the very front door of your home. So if you happen to go in your garage most of the time, just be making sure that you occasionally check that front door, otherwise you might not notice that your water is going to be shut off the next day. And water shutoffs for residential only happen Monday through Friday between 9 and 4. And for businesses, it's a 48-hour notice that we provide. Other miscellaneous impacts to your property, you'll be notified by a tag that looks like the one on the right side of the screen, and that's for impacts to your driveway or other things when we're going to pave the street, things like that that just we want people to be aware of. And then we have videos on our website that walk people through the process from start to finish and also answer a lot of questions that people typically have about these projects, questions about impacts to their irrigation system, driveway impacts, impacts to the mail or delivery of mail, garbage, how all of that is addressed. So I'd encourage people to watch the video. So the first project that we're here to talk about tonight is 19-1, and this particular project includes 131st Avenue between Crooked Lake Boulevard and Coon Creek Boulevard, and then the local streets to the north and south of that are also included. We're also going to be reconstructing Partridge Street south of Main Street and west of Shenandoah Boulevard. That's going to include segments of 123rd Lane, 124th Avenue, and Raven Street. And then 127th Avenue east of Hanson Boulevard to Crane Street is included, as well as Crane Street going to the south to Main Street. That's also part of this project. So all total, it's 4 miles of local streets that are being reconstructed. The work is going to include resurfacing the road. We'll replace all of the damaged concrete curb and gutter, driveway panels, repair any storm, sanitary manholes, any drainage problem areas that people are having on their streets. We'll selectively replace hydrants and valves throughout the project. And then there's going to be a new sidewalk on the north side of 131st Avenue between Crooked Lake Boulevard and Coon Creek Boulevard. And then a new sidewalk on the north side of 127th Avenue between Hanson Boulevard and Crane Street. So I will turn it over to the council now to hold the public and the assessment hearing.
All right. Council have any questions of Mr. Hanson before we open up the public hearing?
Mayor,
Councilmember Kraskowiak?
in 19-1, are these streets going to be completely resurfaced, or is there a mill and overlay aspect to any of it?
They will all be completely resurfaced.
And then a follow-up question, comment on that, and this is going to include our new 3-inch full depth.
That's
surfacing.
correct.
Okay.
However, certain streets like 131st Avenue will have a thicker pavement section from that.
Okay.
Yep.
Okay. Any other questions, Mr. Hanson? All right. So with that, then, we will open up the public hearing on project 19-1. If you're here to address council for any of the streets in that project, 19-1, now would be your time. And seeing nobody from project 19-1, we'll close the public hearing for that. And we need to take some actions here.
Mr. Mayor,
Councilmember Kraskowiak?
I'll make a motion to adopt resolution 19-1 sub 6A, ordering the improvement.
Okay. I suppose we should do this separate because it's a supermajority. Okay. So we have a motion?
Second.
Motion by Kraskowiak, second by Demmer, to adopt resolution number 19-1 sub 6A, ordering the improvements. Any discussion? Hearing none, all in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Opposed? And that motion carries. And then we've got one more resolution there.
Mayor?
Councilor Griscoviac?
I'll make a motion to adopt Resolution 19-1 Sub 8, approving plans and specifications and ordering advertisement for bids.
Second.
Motion by Griscoviac, second by Kicker. Discussion? Hearing none, all in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Opposed? All right, and that motion carries, and we are on to item 8, which is project 19-2.
So the next project on the list for street reconstruction here tonight is 19-2. This is our state aid project. And the streets that are included are Wedgewood Drive from Main Street to Round Lake Boulevard, Olive Street from 121st Avenue to Main Street, and then Foley Boulevard from 115th Avenue to 124th Lane. The project will include road resurfacing. We will replace all the damaged curb and gutter, any driveway panels, repair the storm and sanitary manholes, also replacing valves and hydrants, but then replacing the entire water main system on Olive Street between 121st and Main Street. And then we will be replacing the sidewalk, the concrete sidewalk that exists on Foley on the east side, all the way from Northdale Boulevard to Main Street. We're going to replace that with an 8 to 10 foot wide asphalt trail. We're going to do that by shifting the curb line that's on the east side further to the west to be able to make room for that. We will also be putting in strategic bump outs, curb bump outs along Foley Boulevard. And the reason for these is they create a shorter crossing distance for pedestrians. And then they also help to calm traffic. And so we're going to be looking at doing those at the Goldenrod Trail crossing and then at 123rd Avenue. And the other thing on Foley Boulevard is the Sand Creek culverts they were originally constructed in 1967. They are in poor shape, and we need to replace those as well with 2 concrete box culverts. So that's going to be part of the project. We are going to have to close down Foley Boulevard for approximately 3 weeks minimum to be able to do that work. And we'll provide more information certainly to residents. There will be detours in place and signs put up for that well in advance of that work. Another thing I didn't mention with the curb bump outs, the Goldenrod Trail crossing, there's safety concerns from the public as well as staff at that particular crossing. So we're proposing to put in a rectangular rapid flashing beacon device. This is an actuated sign that a pedestrian can walk up to, press a button, and yellow lights will start flashing. Due to the curvature of the road, there's also going to be advanced flashers around the curve, so vehicles that are approaching from both directions will be able to see that, and it'll start flashing when a pedestrian is about to cross the sidewalk or the crosswalk there. At the open houses, we had a lot of questions from residents about what exactly we meant by a curb bump out. So this is a graphic. It won't look exactly like this, but this is a representation of what those look like. So I will turn this particular project over to council now to hold the public and assessment hearing, and certainly if there's any questions I can answer.
And to save him coming up for the public hearing, I'm sure Mr. Anderson's going to be concerned that we have really good signage to get people through to Bunker Hills Golf Course.
Yep, absolutely.
All right. Anybody have any questions for Mr. Hanson on this project? Councilmember Demmer?
I think I know the answer, but just in case it was going to come up anyway, there's an awful lot of houses on that their property touches Foley that are not assessed. I'm assuming you're assessed if your driveway goes onto Foley,
Driveway and address,
if your address is Foley.
well, both of them, the driveway
Okay.
and the address need to be on the street that we're being redone. Sometimes you have the driveway and the address is on the other street, but the driveway, I would say, is the most key to having benefit for the property, having access onto the road that's being redone. So that's what we look for. The streets the properties that are along Foley, that aren't being assessed at this time will be assessed when the street in which their driveway and their address is oriented to is redone.
So for example, if you are on the corner of Foley and Kumquat, you'll get assessed when you fix Kumquat, or you'll get assessed when you fix Foley, but you won't get assessed for both.
Correct. We only assess once.
Right.
Good clarification. Councilmember Johnson?
You're probably gonna be able to guess where I'm going with this, but what is the plan for the mailboxes that are along Foley, both on the west side where there's gonna be sidewalk and also on the east side where there's gonna be a new trail? And the reason I raised the question is because, as some people here know, mailboxes inside of sidewalks and trails, like on the other part of Foley, don't work so well.
Correct. Councilmember Johnson, so on the west side of Foley, we're not proposing to change anything in terms of the location of the curb or the concrete sidewalk that's there today.
Great,
So those mailboxes would be replaced where they exist today,
in their current location.
in their current location.
Okay.
And then on the east side, we plan to replicate a boulevard when we construct the trail. So there will be a grassed area there that will be able to accommodate a mailbox. Unlike what you see south on Foley, where the concrete goes right up to the back of the curb and there's just not enough room to
Right.
to really negotiate through there and have a mailbox.
Then the only thing I would say, and this is just a request from the council member that represents that area, and that is it the city's intention then? And maybe I do need a point of clarification, is it the city's intention that the city will be maintaining that grass strip by the trail? Or will that be the homeowner whose backyard it might be, or whose front yard it might be?
So like any boulevard in Coon Rapids, the responsibility to maintain it is the property owner.
Okay, so I'd like us to, when we go out and talk to people in the community and we, you know, they're ending up with kind of less yard because they've got an 8 to 10 foot trail now there, but they're gonna have a couple of foot strip of grass there to remind them that the city's expectation is that they'll maintain that.
Yeah, and we would have a 5-foot strip of grass, so
Okay,
it'd be more than just a couple feet.
good, thank you.
Yep.
Councilmember Demmer?
Sorry, one other thing. When you notified people, did you notify everyone who would have a change to their yard, or did you notify the people being assessed? Because now I'm realizing the trail's gonna go through a lot of yards that aren't assessed.
Yeah, so at this stage of the game, we have only notified those that are being assessed, but right now, we're in the process of writing letters to people that have sidewalk or trail impacts as part of these projects. And then what we do, right before we send out the big mailing, the frequently asked questions, the schedule in May to all the people that are being assessed, we look at all the ancillary properties around our projects, we highlight those, and we send them all that information so that they know who to contact if there's a problem or if they have a question. But at this stage, we've only contacted the people that are assessed, except for the sidewalks and the trails here. Those people will be getting letters very soon.
Okay. Any other questions of Mr. Hanson? Then with that, we're going to open up the public and assessment hearing for project 19-2, again, which is the Wedgewood Drive from Main Street to Round Lake Boulevard, Olive Street from Main Street to 121st Avenue, and Foley Boulevard from 124th Lane to 115th Avenue. So we'll open up the public hearing for that. Is anybody here to address council for project 19-2? Anybody here want to address council for project 19-2? Yes, sir. Please come up to the podium then and give us your name and,
Yeah, sure, why not?
give us your name and address. And,
Jim Molina on Foley Boulevard, 11604.
No, I'm sorry. Wait till you get to the mic there,
Okay.
please. Yep.
I can yell pretty loud though.
Well,
Hi, this is Jim Molina. I live at 11604 Foley Boulevard.
thank you.
So I do have some concerns about this project, as you probably are aware of. One of the things I want to talk about is the sidewalks on the west side of the street. Are they being replaced as well?
Anything that's damaged will be replaced on the west side.
Okay.
Yep.
I would imagine that, I don't know how you guys figured out the assessment for this. You know, I know it's a couple $1,000s. It's a lot of money out of our pockets. I'm wondering, is it just the people on Foley Boulevard that are getting assessed, or is it the people in the surrounding area around Foley Boulevard?
It's the standard assessment per residential home that we set every year. And it's always just slightly adjusted for inflation. So I think 2 years ago or 3 years ago, I think I spent almost 1,900 for it, and now it's up to 2,000.
Yeah.
Yeah, and you're on Mississippi Drive, and then I ended up, last year having my road redone, and I got assessed the updated version from what you got, I think. So it was the same kind of flat fee for me as
Okay,
well.
because I know a lot of people that use Foley Boulevard don't live in Coon Rapids. They live
Of
in
course.
Andover, they live in Blaine, they live in Anoka, they use Foley Boulevard as an I-35W is what we call it sometimes, you know, they're going 50, 60 miles an hour down that stretch. So so the people that are using it actually more are not being assessed for this.
So because this is a more used road, it is reconstructed to a higher standard than the other streets, so it should last as long as the other ones if it's done right, Mr. Hanson? Is that correct? Yep.
Okay?
Okay.
And then,
Councilmember Demmer?
oh, I bet you were gonna say the same thing as me, so you say it better.
I just
Mr. Hammer.
wanted to kind of address this question of, only those people with a driveway onto Foley Boulevard are being assessed. However, as they pointed out, this is a state aid route, so there's significant gas tax dollars that go towards the repair of this. So while there are minimal assessments because of the minimal properties, everyone else that's paying into the gas tax is also contributing to the higher cost due to the higher standard for this roadway.
Which we know that that gas tax is probably gonna go up again. Okay, that's all the questions I have. Thank you. Just for
That's a
another
different,
time.
that's a
Wasn't
different
your
public
question.
hearing.
Yeah, I think it's a good point, though, just to, you know, the point about you pay the same whether your street is just a local street that only you live on, or whether it's a big road like Foley, because we have other sources to pay the difference to make a road like Foley a higher quality road. So you're not paying extra for the trail or for the thick road. You're paying the same amount as someone who lives in a cul-de-sac.
All right. Anybody else here to address us for the public hearing for project 19-2? Oh, all right. Please come up to the podium and give us your name and address.
Karen Bellina, 11604 Foley Boulevard.
Okay.
So I've lived on that street for 33 years. Driving down that street ever since Foley was redone on the other side of Northdale, all you did was move the cluster from Egret and Foley down to Northdale and Foley. So you come up to the stoplight and you got other people in the far right lane revving their engines, flooring it to bypass everybody in the left lane. People almost get in accidents. I almost got hit today. Pardon my shaking, but it was a very scary situation. I've also had other situations. I live on the west side. So I'm pulling up to my house, got the blinker on. You got people racing past me on the shoulder, and many times they pass you on the oncoming lane. So
When you're turning left.
when I'm turning left. So when he's talking about bump outs, and we've talked several times, he's talking about 2 spots of having bump outs. I would like to see bump outs further down Foley towards Northdale. And whoever is going to do this project, they need to figure out what to do at that intersection to reduce the possibility of accidents, because it's going to happen. And you know, at Northdale and Foley, there's been a lot of accidents already. So, like I said, living there for 33 years, dealing with all this, it's a scary situation sometimes. And a lot of times they're hot rods, but they're also people like you that pass me up, or the oncoming side. So I would like that addressed. And I don't know who to talk to when it comes to the planning.
Well, it would actually be an interesting conversation to have, because it was just reconstructed. That is a county intersection. And I know it's much better than it was, but it would be interesting to know, to get some sort of an accident report and see how it has improved or not from the reconstruction.
Yeah,
So-
that's actually related to my question, and, you know, I guess anecdotally, have you noticed any improvement in the traffic patterns there since the reconstruction?
No.
Okay.
As a matter of fact, Foley has gotten worse from Northdale to Main Street.
Northdale to Main Street, but
That's-
let me ask you about the intersection there. When you're at that intersection, because you go through it every day, when you're at that intersection at Foley and Northdale, has there been any improvement that you've noticed with
No.
respect to what the county did when they redid the intersection?
No, they have a pork chop there to make a right, that's it. Otherwise, you've got people pulling up in both lanes, just like they did on Egret and Foley. So, like I said, all they did was move the irritation from one intersection down to the next. And Foley, north of Northdale, at anywhere from 3:30 to 5, it is nonstop, just nonstop. And then you've got a cluster of people trying to, doing the zipper in front of the florist shop. And you've got people trying to get into the florist shop, and then you got people behind those people honking their horns, all ticked off because somebody took their time to pull into a florist shop to get some flowers. Or the corner service station to get the car work done. Or to take a left on Olive there at Dunn Brothers. You know, it is horrible there. It is much worse. So ever since the project finished, from that intersection down, it's gotten worse.
That's important for us to hear. Thank you for your
Yeah.
thoughts on that. And I would think it actually goes beyond 5, especially in the winter. It probably goes till 6:30.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah.
So, and this particular project, 19-2, is from 115th to Main Street. But your point is well taken, and I think we should look at that intersection since it was just redone.
Yeah, you know, it's gonna be redone from Northdale on down to Main Street, so,
115th Avenue,
well, I'm at 116th,
Yeah,
so,
so-
115th.
yep.
So, which is just by the florist.
Nope,
And when I
we
talk
get it,
about
we
that
get it.
intersection, so it's all getting done as far as I'm concerned, so,
Okay, thank you.
yeah. All right.
Anybody else here to address council under item 19-2? All right, you can please come up to the podium and give us your name and address.
Dennis Drum, 187, 117th Avenue. I live in the area there. I just want to make a comment on that. I think the intersection there has improved, but it's such a short stretch, like she's saying, from the stoplight to the florist shop, and I agree with her. It's just a mad dash right there. If they could elongate it out a little bit farther or put signs up to let people know that we're gonna go down to one lane there. That's where the issue is right there, and I agree with everything else, but as far as the intersection, you got turn lanes there now, a lot better than it was before, but it's just going north of there is where we got problems.
We
So-
moved the drag race from Egret to
You
Northdale.
definitely did,
Okay,
so,
all right.
thank you.
Thank you. Anybody else to address council under project 19-1? There's nobody else, then we will close the public hearing on that. I'm sorry, 19-2. Did I say 19-2?
You said so much.
Sorry, 19-2. Yeah. Councilmember Demmer? Was that the kicker?
Yes.
All right, thank you, sorry.
I'd like to make a motion that the council adopt resolution 19-2, sub 6A, ordering improvements.
Second.
Motion by Kicker, second by Johnson. Discussion? Hearing none, all in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Opposed? And that carries. Sure.
I'd like to make a motion that we adopt resolution 19-2, sub 8, approving plans and specifications and ordering advertisement for bids.
Second.
Motion by Kicker, second by Johnson. Any discussion? Councilmember Demmer?
I just figured I'd throw this out so that people see the procedure here. So this is the part that starts past the intersection, but the point about looking at the intersection, that would be a different, that wouldn't be part of this bill. I think we all heard it and we all want to go get the data, and so we'll handle that at a different time. So passing this has no bearing on that either way. Just want to make that clear.
Right. Right, the boundaries of project 19-2 are 115th Avenue, so
But we
We're
are,
still wanting to-
we're still wanting to,
we want to
absolutely.
take a look at the change, and it seems right to evaluate it after it has been there for a while.
Yep, I get it. Okay, so we have a motion and a second. Any other discussion? Hearing none, all in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye, opposed, and 19-2 carries. And we are on to item 9, which is resolutions 19-3, sub 6A and sub 8. Mr. Hanson?
Mr. Mayor and Council, Project 19-3 is another local road reconstruction project. This one totals 3.3 miles in length. It's going to include local streets that are generally bounded by Foley Boulevard, Dogwood Street, and 115th Avenue, and then University Avenue, all the way up to 117th Avenue, so that includes the Bridgewater neighborhood. Flora Street, north of 109th Lane, over by the Coon Rapids Ice Center. Mississippi Boulevard from Hanson Boulevard to Ibis Street. Holly Street from 93rd Avenue to Springbrook Drive. Springbrook Drive from south of 90th Avenue to approximately the YMCA or the Target on the west side there. And then very south limits of the city, the one-way East River Road, service road from Lart Street to 84th Lane will be redone. The work is going to include resurfacing the road, replacing any damaged curb or driveway aprons or panels that we come across, repairing storm sewer and sanitary manholes. I should say that the East River Road service road is proposed to be done as a mill and overlay project. That street has a thicker asphalt section, and we have taken some asphalt cores that show that it will support a mill and overlay. And the assessments that the people are proposed along that street reflect the dollar amounts. It's a much less dollar amount than those people are being assessed for than the typical reclamation type street project. Work is also to include selective valve and hydrant replacements. However, we're proposing to replace the entire water main system on Mississippi Boulevard between Hanson Boulevard and Ibis Street, as well as the south half of the Bridgewater development. So that's approximately 116th Lane and all of the streets to the south all the way to 115th Avenue. So that includes the cul-de-sacs of Alder Street, Butternut Street, and Cottonwood Street, as well as 116th Avenue as well. And then new sidewalks are proposed on the west side of Springbrook Drive between Holly Street and the YMCA. And then there is a small sidewalk connection that's proposed on the east side of East River Road Service Road between 85th Avenue and south of 84th Lane. So that's a very short, it's it's kind of a worn walking path today. People are obviously using it and walking there. We're proposing to put a sidewalk there. And if there's any questions, I'd be happy to answer them. Otherwise, I'll turn it over to the council to hold the public and the assessment hearing.
All right, anybody have any questions of Mr. Hanson on project 19-3? Councilmember Kraskowiak?
When we go out for bids, does that include, I presume it does, include the improved process for reestablishing the lawns?
Yes, all of these yards will be reestablished with sod. The contractor will maintain the sod for 45 days, and then it's the property owner's responsibility. We'll hand out tags on kind of the parameters of that when we're installing the sod.
And that's true of all these projects this year, correct?
Correct, yep.
Okay, thank you.
Okay.
So lucky.
No, Bright?
Picking all the rocks out of the stuff there.
All right, any other questions, Mr. Hanson, before we open the public hearing? Hearing none. I'm not going to read all these streets. There's 19 of them, so we will just open the public hearing for resolution number 19-3. And is anybody here to address council for the public hearing or assessment hearing for project 19-3? Yes, sir. Use your name and address again, please.
I'm back.
That's all right.
Dennis Strum, 187, 117th Avenue. I live in the Bridgewater edition. When University was redone at 115th and University, it was so that traffic could no longer take a left and go north on University, which inevitably sent all the school buses and all the traffic of parents picking up their kids through our neighborhood. And it's only within the last 3 years, 3 to 4 years, that our streets have become pretty bad. And what I would like to know is what assurance do we have, because it's still going on, that you're not gonna have to go back in 3 or 4 years and repair our street roads again, because they were in good condition prior to this. And I know you guys can't change that out there on University now, but I just wanna know what assurances I can have that you guys don't have to come back in here and do this in 3 or 4 more years. Because, like I said, it's only been 3 or 4 years, and that's how tore up our streets have been with all. Plus, we get everything coming in from Foley too. That cuts across on 117th and 116th lane. They go right out through 117th. Plus, we got the Indy 500 from 117th. I live right on the bend there to the stoplight. I've had the police officers sit in my driveway 3 or 4 different times with my car there so they can be blocked, watching the speeders come down the street. I've pulled so many cars out of my snowbank during the winter months, I don't help them anymore. I'm that frustrated, so. But that's the one thing I'd like to know. Thank you.
Remember how old those streets are there, Mr. Hanson?
And how thin they were in comparison to what we're doing now.
The streets are they were constructed in 1993. So
Okay.
they're about 25 years old, 26 years old. So the city standard for asphalt pavement construction back in the early 90s, well, actually throughout most of its history, has been 2 inches of asphalt pavement. And the street section that we're proposing to put in with this project will be 3 inches total. It'll be put in under 2 lifts. And the mixed designs that we're using nowadays that are specified from MnDOT have come a long way since the asphalt pavement designs that were laid out in the early 90s that a lot of cities and counties used at that time. So Coon Rapids isn't unique in having problems that were constructed with streets 25 years later for streets that were constructed in that time period. Maple Grove and Woodbury developed a lot similar to Coon Rapids in that time period, all have the same types of problems where you're getting stripping on the top layer of asphalt, oxidation on that surface. The new asphalt pavements that we're using nowadays have a lot more resistance and durability to really wide temperature ranges and are much better than what was used before. So, and it'll be thicker as well. So the new streets, pavements in Minnesota are designed to last for 20 years, but we hope through proper maintenance that we'll get at least 35 years out of these streets.
When you say designed to last for 20 years, does that include occasionally maintaining them through a mill and overlay and things like that? Or
That's assuming minimal maintenance.
Okay.
Yep.
All right, anybody else here to address council on project 19-3? And with that, we will close public hearing on project 19-3 and come back to council. Councilmember Demmer?
Move to adopt resolution number 19-3 sub 6A, ordering the improvement.
Second.
Motion by Demmer, second by Griscoviac. Is there a discussion? Hearing none, all in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? And that motion carries. Somebody do the next?
Sure.
Councilmember Demmer?
Move to adopt resolution number 19-3 sub 8, approving plans and specifications and ordering advertisement for bids.
Second.
Motion by Demmer, second by Griscoviac. Any discussion?
Actually, a question.
What? Oh.
I have a question.
Oh, discussion, Councilmember
Yes.
Demmer.
So, do we do any sort of traffic counts on roads before we determine whether we should beef them up beyond the 3-inch standard, or is it sort of a 3-inch standard unless we know it's an artery?
All local streets are designed at the same, have generally the same traffic levels. So when we have a street that we designate as a collector street, because we're seeing higher levels of traffic, we do take traffic counts on those, and we do design those to a thicker section. 4 inches is typically the minimum on any kind of state aid road that we have in Coon Rapids. Foley Boulevard, when that gets redone next year, that's gonna have 6 inches of asphalt on it.
And so to the question about did traffic patterns change sufficiently enough that we should go above and beyond the 3-inch standard, which is above and beyond the 2 inches before, your estimation is even with that change in traffic pattern, we wouldn't be at the point where we should bump it up further.
You know, we recognize the concerns and the frustration that people have in the Bridgewater neighborhood with the signal and the access to university changing around. We have schools on our local system throughout Coon Rapids that have the same asphalt pavement that we're putting in here, and they operate and function very well. Based on the observations we have conducted ourselves by taking a look at the traffic flow at certain times of day, it doesn't warrant a thicker pavement beyond what we're already doing. And we continue to work with the school district to see if there's ways that they can reroute some of their buses. We have been out there, we have counted what we think are the extra traffic, the parents picking up the kids from the middle school as well as the bus traffic, and writing down the bus numbers and conveying that back to the school district to see are there opportunities to reroute some of these buses. It's tricky for them because you can't make a left, there's no signal at 115th. And then you go down to Northdale, it's a skew at the intersection there too, much like it is at Foley in Northdale, and the buses have a trickier time making a left there.
That was really what I want to know, is that you've done some sort of assessment and it's within the range that a 3-inch street would handle. And I like your comparison to other, because like I know, for example, on our side, the Adams is right in the middle of the neighborhood. You can only get there through a neighborhood, and so if that's the same thickness and that's holding up.
Schools are common and
so that would just give me
residential
confidence
neighborhoods,
that you've already got examples out there that are holding up, and so this is appropriate, so I appreciate it.
Other discussion? Hearing none, all in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Opposed? And motion 19-3 sub 8 is approved. That was both, right? Yep, okay. So we are on to item 10, which is to hold the public and assessment hearings, consider resolutions 19-4. Mr. Hanson.
So the last public hearing that we are here for tonight is project 19-4. This is a cooperative project that we're doing with the city of Anoka. Anoka is leading the project. The limits are, it's 121st Avenue from 9th Avenue to approximately 300 feet east of Cree Street. Later on in the agenda, there will be a JPA with Anoka, and that is tied to this project. So the proposal here is to replace the road, but also replace the sanitary sewer pipes, water mains, storm sewer, and then all the associated individual services. One thing that the city of Coon Rapids is going to do in addition to the work that Anoka has proposed to do is add a loop connection. So, and that's on the west, or the east side of the work from Cree Street to our border of Anoka. And the purpose of that, I'll call it a loop connection, is so that it's going to increase water quality for people that live in the area by allowing water to circulate through the system and not having a series of 2 dead ends that aren't connected by pipes in between. Improves the water quality and then also improves redundancy of the system. So we're going to put that in as part of the project. And then the 3 people from Cree Street on the south side of the street, And then to the east will be switched over to Coon Rapids Water as part of that process. So with that, I'll turn it back over to council. And this one, much like the City of Coon Rapids projects, we'll get schedules out to the people that live in the area. And the assessments for Coon Rapids, the people that live on the Coon Rapids side of the border will be proposed to be adopted on May 7th, similar to the rest of the projects in Coon Rapids. However, Anoka might be bidding the project. They may already have taken bids on it or very close to it very soon here. So that'll be, the project essentially be approved by their city before we adopt the assessments.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Hanson. Any other questions for Mr. Hanson before we open it up for public hearing? Okay, then with that, we will open the public hearing for project 19-4. And this is the 121st Avenue from 9th Avenue to approximately 300 feet east of Cree Street. Is anybody here for the public hearing on that? Yes, sir. Give us your name and address, please.
Doug Luyan, 4090 121st Avenue, Northwest.
You can just stand up, it'll hear you.
Is that the Coon Rapids side or the Anoka
Right.
side?
Right. I have to tell people when they come to our house, look on our side of the street, not the Anoka side of the street, because house numbers don't jive, right? They're completely
right.
different, so, yeah. So I just have a couple of questions. First of all, if the council's not aware, there is a drainage dip that basically is at our driveway, and that runs the drainage towards Anoka onto 10th Street. And it has kind of a natural traffic calming function. And so my first question would be, and I think I already know the answer, but I want to get clarification, is that drainage dip going to be retained with the new reconstruction?
Mr. Hanson, do we have any of the details on that? Okay.
I know what the resident is talking about, and that is proposed to be removed.
Oh,
So what he's talking about is, it's a concrete curb essentially with no back on it that drains across the street. So similar to our concrete tri-sections that you often see at our intersections. There's one very similar to it on Hanson Boulevard, south of Coon Rapids Boulevard.
Yep, I
that
know
I'm
it
sure
well.
you're well aware of. But that is proposed to be removed with the project.
okay. All right, thank you.
So that drainage dip, if you want to call it that, has served as kind of a natural traffic calming function as far as slowing traffic down. It's a pretty long traffic run from, what is it called, Zia, 121st and Zia, all the way over to 9th. So it allows vehicles to pick up speed. So I'm concerned about speed when that's removed. We already hear about it when the vehicles are moving at an excessive speed and they hit that bump. When they bottom out, the FedEx trucks, the UPS trucks and the like. So my question is there the potential that we could have a speed bump incorporated into the project?
Okay, that's a good question. Well, I would say the answer is no,
We
because,
do not allow speed bumps on
Right.
our city streets.
right.
Okay.
But it seems like though with houses from Coon Rapids and Anoka, you should be able to get double police coverage on that road, shouldn't you?
There you go. Well, that's kind of tying into some questions I have, but if I were a king for a day, I would put stop signs in right at that intersection of 121st and 10th, going both to east and west because of that length of road going from, I keep forgetting the name of the road, Zia all the way to 9th. Just because of the speed of that traffic. So I'm wondering, also school bus, there's a school bus, at least one drop-off that comes from Anoka on 10th and stops on 10th right at 121st. And the kids get off the school bus and they cross right there to get on the south side of 121st. And so it's not a very safe situation to have a drop-off there and kids walking across the street. Especially without stop signs and without the drainage dip, if you want to call it that. So I just want to express that concern, and when the project is completed, if maybe we could have some additional enforcement in the area, especially on weekdays during rush hour, to monitor speed. We have especially a problem with traffic coming down 10th and blowing through the stop sign onto 121st. So I believe it's going to be a potential increase issue of speed and going through that stop sign because of the removal of that drainage dip.
Okay. Thank you, sir.
Question.
Councilmember Demmer?
So to that point, I know that we have a safety commission that goes and figures out where we should put stoplights and where we don't. We're not allowed to legislate that from here, else we keep asking for stop signs in front of our own houses. So that's handled by a safety commission. But what I don't know is whether this is the Coon Rapids Safety Commission or the Anoka Safety Commission that would be dealing with those questions.
I can take that.
Okay.
Well, we can, with the city of Coon Rapids has a traffic review committee that meets typically quarterly from spring to fall. The city does have very strict standards or requirements for stop sign installation. In fact, the council needs to enact an ordinance to put up stop signs in Coon Rapids, because like you say, if we didn't, we'd probably have stop signs at most all intersections at this point. Stop signs, when they're put in for purposes of speed control, are not, or have shown that they're not effective, because what happens is that people that feel like, they pull up to an intersection, they stop, there's no cars there, they'll tend to speed up in between intersections when they feel a stop sign is not warranted. So we can certainly put the location through our process and see if it meets the volume and the crash characteristics that would warrant a stop sign, like we do for any other request that comes in any other location in Coon Rapids. But it would have to meet our criteria before we would recommend it for installation.
So the real question is, does changing that dip actually change the safety characteristic of, not proposing that you put a stop sign there, but is there any process by which you review, this is the history of it, then we changed it, this is what happened going forward, and therefore we do X or Y?
Well, one of the reasons that we don't allow speed bumps is snow plows, but they're also a safety problem. And I would say there's as much of a safety concern with having it in place and remaining in place for reasons of not wanting to have a vehicle erratically hit it and run off the road, or not expect it and something else happen, than for whatever benefit it provides for speeding or for reducing speeding. It's very likely that most people, statutory speed limits in neighborhoods are 30 miles per hour. Most people, every time we have done a speed study in any neighborhood, typically are going between 20 and 25 miles per hour. When you see, when you're in a neighborhood, people drive based on the conditions and the environment that they're in. That's the number one factor that determines how fast people speed or drive.
Councilmember Johnson, do you still have something?
Well, I grew up in Anoka, and so I know the street really well. Is that kind of border thoroughfare that comes through. And I guess the one thing that I would like you to do is to put it through and just have a conversation with the city of Anoka as well. Because what it reminds me of a little bit is my neighborhood at 105th, where we ended up doing more controlling and lighting at the intersection with Holly and 105th, which is a T intersection, like Cree is a T into 121st. And if you could have a conversation with Anoka about that dynamic and then put it through the process, I think all of us would appreciate it.
And sometimes when we look at the intersection, we find there's other improvements that could be made. Sometimes there's a sight distance or some vegetation that's encroaching on the corner, or maybe there's a light that could be put in. So, yep.
Okay, sorry, the wheels have come off. We're still in the public hearing. Is anybody else here to address council for project number 19-4? Yes, ma'am. Name and address, please.
Hey, Cheryl Luyan, 4090 121st. Regarding the dip, I have petitioned the city of Coon Rapids and the city of Anoka to put signs up, stop signs, dip signs, whatever. Coon Rapids did. So now I'm called the dip lady in our neighborhood because it's right there. And I'm okay with that. But it didn't fix the problem. people, you should look at that street, all the ruts in it from people bottoming out, and all the pretty floral language coming out of the mail trucks, the UPS trucks. It's quite flowery for little kids to hear. So I don't know what the problem is, or I know what the problem is. I don't know how to fix it, but I really would like it to be looked into. It's not just me, it's the neighbors. You hear them yelling people to slow down because it's ridiculous. Our mailbox has been plowed over twice so far. So something needs to be done. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, anybody else to address council for project 19-4? 19-4, with that, we'll close the public hearing. Back to council.
Your Honor.
Councilmember Demmer.
Move to adopt resolution number 19-4, sub 6A, ordering the improvement.
Second?
Motion by Demmer, second by Kicker. Discussion? Hearing none, all in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Opposed? And that motion carries.
You guys will figure out a way to look at the safety part.
Oh, yeah.
Thank you.
All right, we are on to item 11. Thank you all for coming.
There's no second part because that's Anoka's.
You can hang around, council meeting will go for a while yet. Or you can leave, whatever. Item 11 under old business is to consider adoption of ordinance 2219, authorizing sale of residential lot 100XX Cottonwood Street. You want me to just read what I got here, Mr. Cornelius, or do you want to cover it?
I can provide a quick summary.
Perfect. You always do such a nice job.
So this item was introduced at your February 5th meeting, ordinance 2219. It's the proposed sale of a lot to Tolberg Homes, which is a builder based in Anoka, Minnesota. We have worked with Tolberg previously on other HRA and city scattered site projects. This particular site is excess right-of-way that was related to a road project that the city did back in the 1980s. When we discovered that it was excess right-of-way last year, we had a conversation about platting it into a buildable lot, which we did. And then we marketed the site. Tolberg approached us to construct a home. They made an offer of $55,000 for the lot, which we think is a fair value for that parcel of land. Their proposal would be to construct a home by March 20th of next year. In order to do that, we would enter into a purchase and redevelopment agreement with the builder. So the actions tonight would be to adopt ordinance 2219, which would authorize the conveyance of the property to Tolberg Homes. Also approve a purchase and redevelopment agreement with the builder. And then authorize the mayor and city manager to execute the deed, as well as city staff to execute the other closing documents. So those are my remarks. I'd be happy to answer any questions.
Thank you. Council?
Your Honor,
Councilmember Johnson?
I'll move adoption of the ordinance conveying property at 100XX Cottonwood Street to Tolberg Homes, to approve the purchase and redevelopment agreement with Tolberg Homes, to authorize Your Honor and the city manager to execute the deed, and to authorize staff to execute other closing documents as necessary to close on the property.
Second.
Motion by Johnson, second by Wells. Discussion? Hearing none, all in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? And that motion carries. Item 12 is to consider adoption of an ordinance 2218, establishing a 6-month moratorium on self-storage facilities. Mr. Fernelius, you did a very nice job laying this out last meeting. Any highlights you just want to hit on this?
Sure, just briefly, Mr. Mayor and Council. So this item was previously discussed with the council at a work session back in January. The ordinance itself was introduced at your last meeting on February 5th. As we've discussed, the city has received a number of applications for self-storage facilities, one of which was approved, one of which the Planning Commission denied, and the council affirmed that decision. There's been other interest. The discussion that we've had with the council has raised a number of questions about how we regulate these, where they're allowed. Should we look at different standards? What's the potential market demand in the future? How many more of these are we going to see? We don't know those answers at this point in time, and so one option is to hit the pause button, if you will, through an interim ordinance, which would establish a development moratorium, essentially, more or less, stop any potential applications for a period of time. In this case, the development moratorium would be for 6 months initially. It could be extended up to an additional 18 months or 24 months in total. And it would apply to any new storage facilities, as well as existing storage facilities that wanted to expand. So during the course of that moratorium, we would not accept any development applications. If it's adopted tonight, it would then take effect 15 days after it's published, which would be March 9th. So I could answer any questions you might have.
All right. Council, any questions for Mr. Fernelius?
Mayor,
Councilmember Griscoviac?
I was just curious, have there been any new applications since it was introduced on February 5th?
Councilmember Griscoviac, no, there have not, although we're aware of one that may be coming in the next week and a half.
And that would be valid because it would come in before it is in effect?
If it's a complete application and it's received before the 9th, yes, then we'd have to process it.
Okay.
Before the 9th or before, or the 9th is 15 days?
Right.
Yeah,
Correct.
that is, okay,
Correct.
thank you. All right, any other questions?
Your Honor.
Councilmember Demmer?
Move to adopt ordinance 2218, establishing a 6-month moratorium on the new development or expansion of existing self-storage facilities in the city.
Second?
Motion by Demmer, second by Kicker. Discussion? Councilmember Demmer?
So I think this is a good idea, partially because the sudden number of these applications coming in all at once, partially because the small number of open parcels of land in the city, and just quite frankly, I think we all sort of have assumptions about these businesses, but I know that there have been a lot of changes in how these businesses operate and what they look like, and it seems like a good time to just kind of stop and say, is this going to be something that we put it in and then it degrades quickly over time and we're going to wish we didn't, or is this something that we're going to be glad we put in? It's hard to do that while they're coming in fast and furious. So I really appreciate the chance to stop and take a look. And I think we have to be very careful with doing moratoriums on entire business types. But this does seem warranted to me. It doesn't seem like this is going to be something that we're going to be able to get agreement on the goodness or the badness of them without a directed chance to stop and sort of evaluate what the current state is. So I support it.
All right. We have a motion and a second. Any further discussion? Hearing none, all in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Opposed? And that motion carries and is adopted. We are on to item 13. Consider resolution number 19-11 sub 8, accepting plans and specifications for miscellaneous trail reconstruction and authorizing solicitation of bids. And this is the following trail projects: Nelson Park Trail Reconstruction, Basketball Court Replacement, Pedestrian Curb Ramp Installations; Trackside Park Trail Reconstruction, Basketball Court Replacement, Pedestrian Curb Ramp Installations; and Wedgewood Trail, which is trail reconstruction, culvert replacement, pedestrian curb ramp installations. If approved, the advertisement is scheduled to be published February 22nd and March 1st, with a bid opening scheduled for March 15th. Bid results and a recommendation for contract award would be presented to council at the April 2nd, 2019 meeting. Once the contract has been awarded, the work will be scheduled to take place between June and August of 2019. Was that it, Mr. Hammer?
Sounds great.
Got it all in there. Nice. All right. Councilmember Kicker?
I'll make a motion that the council adopt resolution number 19-11 sub 8, approving plans and specifications and ordering advertisement bids of bids for the 2019 miscellaneous trail improvement project.
Second.
Motion by Kicker, second by Demmer. Discussion?
Your Honor.
Councilmember Demmer?
So these are mostly trail reconstructions. Do we know how old the trails are and if there's anything that caused them to be shorter life than expected, or do we get a pretty good run out of them?
Mr. Hammer?
Councilmember Demmer, I wish Mr. Hanson was here. I generally characterize this as pavement rehabilitation. So yeah, they are going to be reconstructed. I couldn't tell you when they were constructed, but I do know in particular the Wedgewood Trail being along that drainage way. You got the plant growth in there. And one thing I should point out, and I forgot to mention, was if you look at the attachment for the Wedgewood Trail, there is, next to Vineyard Park, there's a pond there. There's like 2 parallel trails that run through there. We're actually going to eliminate one of those as part of this. As we looked at it further, it's more to maintain. There were some benches there that were vandalized over time, so we're going to take the one to the west, the 8-foot wide trail, and convert that back to lawn space and rehabilitate the 10-foot wide trail. But I can certainly get back to you, Councilmember Demmer, on the age of these trails, but maybe somebody that's been here a little longer.
I guess the real thing is, like, I saw that trail that it was in Woodcrest or Wintercrest, one of the two, where it degraded really quickly because the water running down the street really messed it up in a hurry, and then we fixed it. But whenever there's something where, if it has a short life, I always just hope that we go and look at why it had a short life, and instead of just patching it, we take the time to do it right. So that, you don't have to tell me the exact age, just hoping that we'll look into that, and if it did have a shorter than expected life, we figure out why and propose fixes.
All right. Any other discussion? Hearing none, all in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? And that motion carries. We're on to item 14. To consider resolution 19-5 sub 8, approving plans and specifications and ordering advertisement for bids for annual street maintenance program. Mr. Hammer?
Mr. Mayor, members of the council, this is our annual street maintenance program whereby we are the administrator for the north area. All in all, I believe there are 8 or 9 people participating this year, and I apologize, don't have the memo up. But the city does administer it. We do have funds in our street maintenance program. It includes crack sealing, mainly our collector roadways. That's part of the preservation thing that Mr. Hanson spoke about earlier, is doing the right maintenance at the right times to try to get them to last longer. So we're getting away from some of that seal coating that we typically have people come in with bags full of rocks and other things saying, here you go, you can have your rocks back. In particularly in the cul-de-sac areas, we did it last year, the bubbles, those take a beating, all the turning movements coming in and out of driveways, garbage trucks, school buses. So we're looking to fog seal those specifically, all of those this year. Last year we just tried it in a few different areas. It worked real well for us, so we're kind of shifting to some more fog sealing. So you'll see that in the map that's here, is being creative and trying to find the right fix at the right time. That's a little more challenging in that you have to keep people off of that street for a little bit longer, but it's done successfully in other communities, and in the end we'll schedule them around trash days and other things and work real hard to try to do half the road at one time and be able to allow people to pass. So this is the annual program. It's a little longer than our typical programs to get going because all of the other cities then have to go back and approve their funding, and it takes an extra month longer. So crack sealing, seal coat, fog seals, sweeping was removed recently, but with that I'll certainly stand for any questions we have.
Okay. Councilmember Kicker?
Mr. Hammer, how long do you have to stay off the streets with the fog sealing?
Councilmember Kicker, we like to say 6 to 8 hours.
Okay.
But there are opportunities, if it's warm enough on that particular day. It's a function of the temperature and moisture and all the other humidity. But if we're able to do half the roadway and people drive at slow enough speeds, then you don't have to worry about that tracking component. So there's an educational piece that will go out as part of that, and notifications through the contractor and staff.
Any other questions?
Your Honor?
Councilmember, who's it? Kicker, thank you.
I make a motion that the council adopt resolution number 19-5 sub 8 approving plans and specifications and ordering advertisement for bids for the 2019 street maintenance program.
Second.
Motion by Kicker, second by Demmer. Discussion? Hearing none, all in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? And that motion carries. And we are on to item 15. Consider resolution number 18-18 sub 9, awarding a contract for the Pleasure Creek Culvert Extension. Mr. Himmer, you want me to read this, or you want to touch on it?
Mr. Mayor, members of the council, this is a long-standing issue for the last couple of years we've had with the pedestrian bridge on Coon Rapids Boulevard. Working with Anoka County, we have a partnership. You approved the joint powers agreement last year. The bids weren't so good in that short time frame, so we figured we'd give it a rest and go at it again through the winter. We've reduced those costs now by roughly $40,000 to $45,000, so it's about $30,000 more than we had anticipated. But being it's a 50-50 split with Anoka County, we will have to put the sidewalk in after the fact. That's 100% city cost. But we didn't really have a funding source for this, but being this kind of a stormwater component now, it cleans up some of the old retaining walls, some of the maintenance responsibilities that go with it. So getting a partner involved and eliminating a bridge and getting a sidewalk in a typical boulevard setting, I believe is win-win for all of us. And so with that, I'll be happy to answer any questions.
Nice. All right. Any questions, or?
Your Honor.
Councilmember Demmer.
Super excited to get rid of the scary old bridge. So I will move to adopt resolution number 18-18 sub 9, awarding a contract to Dryden Excavating Inc. in the amount of $129,244.96 for improvement to the existing culvert on Pleasure Creek at Coon Rapids Boulevard.
Second.
Motion by Demmer, second by Johnson. Discussion? Hearing none, all in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? And that motion carries. Item 16 is to consider a joint powers agreement with Coon Creek Watershed District for Middle Sand Creek Corridor Restoration Project. I kind of half expected Mr. Hanson to be back in here to tell us about this. Mr.
Looking awfully busy back there, Mr. Mayor.
Yeah.
Just as a reminder, this was part of a work session discussion we had briefly last week to review the joint powers agreement. Middle Sand Creek is a continuation of the work that was done west of Zion Street last year, and so that will continue from the railroad tracks to the east. One point that I would point out is that there was a minor change to the JPA. It's section 5, paragraph 5, under term and termination. The one on your packet says, or as allowed to be terminated hereinafter. Well, nowhere else in this contract is there a hereinafter, so that was struck. It's just for the life of the project or until December 31st, 2046. Period, and that will be the same condition for the next item as well. So it's bank stabilization project, reducing total dissolved solids in the bank, those nice removal of trees, allow the under canopy to grow up. You're taking some of those root balls, smashing them into the banks to hold that together, habitat for fish and other things, and then there's kind of a reforestation and a lesser planting plan. But the idea is kind of remove the canopy above to allow more of the undergrowth to take hold and protect that bank, as well as there are different sections in here for some riprap and connecting the floodplain back to allow for some more floodplain storage, and all land owned by the city of Coon Rapids. And I'll be happy to answer any questions you have.
So this says it's the Middle Sand Creek between the Burlington Northern Santa Fe Railroad and Kumquat Street. Nowhere in here does it say Exeon. Just had to work our way through. Had to work our way around to that pronunciation.
There is a small gap between Zion and the railroad
Ouch.
tracks, yes, that we are not addressing.
Okay. Anybody have any questions other than questioning his pronunciation?
Mayor,
Councilmember Griscoviac.
just a clarification, this is all city-owned land, right? In
Correct.
here? But there's no cost to the city for any of this rehabilitation.
That's correct. It's a public ditch. It's the responsibility of the district, but we're always good partners with them,
Yeah.
so, yes,
And a big benefit for our community. Okay, great.
yes.
All right, looking for a motion here.
And I will replace both of these JPAs for you before you sign them, Mr. Mayor.
Okay, thank you. Councilmember Demmer?
Move to approve the joint powers agreement with the Coon Creek Watershed District for implementation of the Middle Sand Creek Corridor Restoration Project.
Second.
Motion by Demmer, second by, we'll give it to Kicker. Any discussion? Whew. Hearing no discussion, all in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye, opposed, and that motion carries. And we are on to item 17. Consider a joint powers agreement with Coon Creek Watershed District for Woodcrest Creek Iron Enhanced Sand Filter Project. There was a lot to this. Basically, it's a project to try and clean the phosphorus up down there. And any impact, they're gonna try and work with the disc golf folks to make sure that it's a win for them. And, Mr. Himmer, anything else you wanna?
Mr. Mayor, there is a cost contribution to us on this one to the tune of about $217,000. We're paying roughly 25% of the project costs. Designs coming from the Watershed District, grant dollars to the Clean Water Act. It addresses phosphorus and E. coli in Woodcrest, which is a tributary to Coon Creek, which is an impaired water body. So we have the space, we have a pond in line, we have a good opportunity here in a partnership, and it meets our water quality goals, and it's another group effort with the Watershed District. So there is contribution for us and maintenance in the long term, but again, it's that partnership while they work with us through the inspections and monitoring, and they're a partner in any future repairs or remedies that are needed. But it's another good project for us and meets our goals.
Councilmember Demmer?
Yeah, that place gets pretty gross, so anything we do to clean it out is fantastic. And again, it sounds like the disc golf course disc golf players are happy with the fact that they get to make their course even better, so again, sounds great. So I would move to approve the joint powers agreement with the Coon Creek Watershed District for the implementation of the Woodcrest Creek Iron Enhanced Sand Filter Project.
Second.
Motion by Demmer, second by Griscoviac. Discussion? Hearing none, all in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Aye, opposed, and that motion carries. On to item 18. Consider resolution number 19-9 sub 8, accepting plans and specs for Erlinson Pedestrian Bridge and Dahlia Park culverts and authorizing solicitation of bids. Just remember the Erlinson Park pedestrian bridge, is that a size thing or is it just getting old or?
It's a size, Mr. Mayor, as well as the channel itself, and also some bad design with regard to ADA and safety considerations for pedestrians. So all of those things combined.
Excellent. And then the Dahlia Park, there's just that narrow walking bridge down there, so that'll be replaced with two 24-inch culverts, so then it'll be just a nice trail through there.
That is correct. There's also some major sediment that's accumulated in that area, so it's more of a stormwater element that also eliminates a bridge. This one maybe not as scary, but it's another maintenance item and gives us a wider use and a better use of that park. So primarily a stormwater benefit to us that improves the trail condition as well.
Excellent, all right. Councilmember Demmer?
I have a question. The bridge like the Erlinson Park one, it seems like we have a lot of bridges that look exactly like that one in the city and on that trail. Do we have a schedule to replace them? Do we buy them in bulk all at once? Is it just first come, first serve? I mean, I'm just sort of curious why this one and why not the 20 others?
Councilmember Demmer, members of the council, last year was the first year that I took a holistic review of all pedestrian bridges. We prioritized them, so they'll be coming back to you over time. So we're addressing the worst first, and others will be coming in the future, but these are the ones we put in the budget for this year.
Yeah, that makes sense. So if we're going forward replacing one a year, will we have them all replaced before we have to replace the first one again, such that we're just always going to be replacing one a year, or will we fall behind and we'll have to replace 2 a year at some point?
No, Councilmember Demmer, the idea is to get ahead. And you may have seen, we self-performed down in Woodcrest Park. There's that pedestrian bridge. It had some significant erosion going on underneath it. We removed the decking. While the bridge was in good condition, the abutments were starting to fail. So by just doing some grading, adding some riprap, diverting some of that flow, we probably saved ourselves a bridge reconstruction in the future. So those that we can self-perform will certainly do that. And Lions Coon Creek will be done as part of that park project. While the bridge will remain intact, we'll be redecking, new side rails and things. So you look at the surface, the substructure, the drainage, all of those things, and you address them as you need to, and don't get to the point where you need to replace an entire bridge potentially.
I appreciate you trying to work the words riprap into as many of these as you can. No, that sounds good, and I just encourage that we keep, it makes a lot of sense to me to have sort of a 1 a year policy or a 0 a year if you can keep them around that long, and that proactive look is really important. So I guess as we do the budgeting, if we, it looks like you had it in the budget, which is great, and I think everyone agrees that getting those to ADA compliant is good too. So unless anyone else has any questions, I will
Go for it.
move to adopt resolution number 19-9 sub 8, approving plans and specifications and ordering advertisement of bids for the Erlinson Park pedestrian bridge and the Dahlia Park culvert installations.
Second.
Motion by Demmer, second by Johnson. Discussion? Hearing none, all in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? And that motion carries. Kind of seems like we're back to another project here. Item 19, consider a joint powers agreement with the city of Anoka for reconstruction of 121st Avenue, project 19-4. I can't imagine there's anything else to talk about here, is there? Mr. Hanson, anything else you want to cover on this?
No, I don't think that there's anything unique other than the city and Anoka will be splitting the cost for the surface work, the street surface work and the storm drainage work, 50-50. The other things, the sewer, excuse me, the sanitary sewer, the water main, the street lights will be paid for by Anoka.
Okay.
Have they signed it yet?
No, they have not executed it. We would be the first one to sign. But they have reviewed it and indicated that they're acceptable to it.
Mr. Hammer?
I'll just point out, Mr. Mayor, Council, that this is just the funding mechanism for the project. We are collecting the assessment dollars that then go to pay for our portion. And as Mr. Hanson stated,
Because of our assessment rates compared to theirs, there's also a city contribution for our portion of the roadway above and beyond what our citizens would be paying. So it's just a funding mechanism. We're taking dollars in, we're pushing them off to pay for the improvements.
It would be a very interesting study at some point to find out what other communities charge for those assessments. Because we always kind of talk in, generalities. Well, we've heard that this community charges this. It would just be interesting to see what it is, so we know if we're providing as good a value as we think we are.
Mr. Mayor, we did spend some time talking to some of our neighboring cities in advance of last year's public hearing. It did include some of that information in the presentation that we had last year. Generally, we're at about 1/3 to 1/2 of what other cities around us are assessing.
Okay, thank you. All right.
Michelle was bringing that up at the start of the presentation. This is less than any other city nearby. In fact, the people on the other side of the road are paying twice as much as you.
Your Honor,
Thank you. Councilmember Kicker.
I make a motion that the council approve the joint powers agreement for reconstruction of 121st Avenue, South Street between 9th Avenue and 300 feet east of Cree Street.
Second.
Motion by Kicker, second by Johnson. Discussion?
Mr. Mayor?
Councilmember Kraskowiak.
Just a clarification to Councilmember Johnson's point, Anoka hasn't signed the joint powers agreement, but they have fully approved the project, just like we did tonight, correct? That's
Yes.
all been done?
Yep, yes, they had their public hearing for the project last December.
Okay, that's it, just clarifying. Thanks.
Okay, any other discussion? Hearing none, I'll get a motion in a second, right? Yes, we did. All in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Opposed? And that motion carries. And we are up to item 20. Consider resolution 19-35, amending the public communication fund budget. And although this is from Francine Hansen, I see Eric working his way up to the podium here. Is that actually, is this a legit request for funding when it comes from the accounting manager? Is it still the accounting manager? We can talk about another business, I guess. All right.
I wasn't sure, maybe Mr. Himmer, he's been doing well tonight. If he wanted to do another, he's passing it to Mark Hansen. Thank you, council, your honor and council. CTN is, and the cable department is requesting a budget increase, basically to forward some capital funds to replace our HVAC system in our large cable TV truck, TV production truck. Basically that truck, it's a large box, about 24 feet in length. That's where staff works out of. Typically there's anywhere from, I would say 4 to 8 people in there, plus there's an entire wall of our expensive production equipment that goes on in the back. And so the truck is approximately 10 years old, and it currently has what they call a 2-ton air conditioning system, HVAC system, 24,000 BTU. That was the max we could get when we purchased it from the manufacturer, Girling and Associates, 10 years ago, due to the electrical system and what was available at the time. And unfortunately, when we get warm summer days, especially just even over 80 degrees, it starts to heat up in the truck. We've had equipment warnings go off. Over the last 10 years, we've actually put portable units, trying to help cool. It just doesn't cycle the air enough, especially for that equipment in the back. Several years ago, we did upgrade our electrical system in the truck for some other needs. Our generator is now much stronger and can actually handle a larger HVAC unit. And so we've kind of looked around. We've worked with the manufacturer, since they're a specialty TV truck. They manufacture 90% of the TV trucks in the country. So they had come out, looked at it, and they recommend upgrading to, basically it doubles the size. It's a 48,000 BTU or 4-ton cooling system. We were trying to, originally when we were working on this, when Fran and I were working on this on Thursday, we were trying to get this in place if it would work out with council and with, it is a custom 4-ton unit that they have to order from Northern Air. Specifically, they have kind of helped design this to cool for the electronics. And so the lead time, it looks like it might be as much as 12 weeks, which puts us in May instead of March, as you notice in the information. So we're still working on that. We do have an air show in Florida in March. That was kind of our, in Florida, you never know. It could be 68 or it could be 92 that first week of April. So at this point, we'll work on that. I've also tried to work with a few local vendors. We've looked at some places in like New Brighton. We've also, over the last 3 years, worked with Badger Refrigeration out of Wisconsin, and they've done some work to try to exhaust it and help vent some of that heat. It has helped, but it's still not really where it should be, especially for the equipment. And one of the nice things, the unit works fine, it's undersized. And so our small truck is 20 years old, and I made a note in the information that our goal is, hopefully, if it works out, to replace that truck next year and utilize the 2-ton unit, and hopefully get another 20 years out of that replacement truck. And so we're basically asking that the budget be amended for the $36,000 to purchase the new HVAC system for the large truck. That includes the unit itself and the labor to get that installed in Ohio.
Councilmember Johnson?
Two big questions, and these really are for the benefit of the public,
Mhm.
and not so much for me. But you mentioned the air show that we have in Lakeland, Florida. We use this truck to get revenue, right? I mean, you lease the time and the expertise out for this truck, and that's actually a moneymaker for CTN.
Yes, Councilmember Johnson, that's exactly correct. Especially this larger truck is our busier truck for production service projects. The air show is something we've looked at for 2 years, and this is our test, basically, on April. They do several air shows throughout the country, and the revenue we generate from that more than covers, our costs.
Sure.
Especially if we get that second or third, fourth, fifth, sixth.
And then the other question that's related to that is the equipment that's in this big truck is worth protecting. It's significant and it's expensive. Can you give us an idea of,
Sure.
of that?
Yeah, because, another good question. The truck itself, if it was just the box, generator, and cab, without any equipment, wiring, all that, typically you're looking at $250,000 to $350,000. The equipment that's in there is at least $650,000.
Right.
So, yeah, we do want to keep it cool.
Makes it a pretty straightforward decision from my perspective.
Cool and protected. and,
Yeah, right.
Secure. All right. So, thank you, I'm glad you asked that, because that was on my little list here to have you do a clarification on that. And Mr. Strauss, is there any guidance you can provide to other departments here to get 20 years out of the trucks?
Yeah.
We wash it a lot with the road salt we get here. But no, we're pretty fortunate. We were going to retire that smaller truck at about 15 years. And, our great Public Works Department has kept it. We've had to replace the springs over the years and a few other items, brakes and the usual things. But otherwise, it's held up. And hopefully we'll get that same luck out of the large truck to get at least another 10 years out of that truck as well.
All right, thank you. Council?
All right.
Councilmember Demmer?
Move to authorize resolution number 19-35, amending the 2019 Public Communications Fund capital budget for a new CTN truck HVAC system.
I'll gladly second that.
Motion by Demmer, second by Johnson. Discussion? Councilmember Demmer?
I was just curious if, maybe I just misunderstood it, but the money that we then make, it just goes back in their budget or general fund or?
Mr. Strauss?
Yep. We do have a separate account that accounts for our expenses and our revenue for that. So that way we can track it as well, how much staff time,
Okay.
equipment costs, things like that. So.
Yeah. There's no way we would have the incredible studio and equipment we've
Yeah.
got if we weren't going outside for additional revenue on this.
Oh, right. I was just thinking about if we're basically forwarding it, where the forwarding comes from and making sure that got paid back and all those things.
stays in-house.
I'm sure everything will be fine.
Mr. Stemwell?
Yeah, Mayor Council, CTN does operate as an enterprise fund, and so we're sort of self-reliant in that regard. One of the significant reasons that the city started getting involved with production services was a changing nature of the revenues for the cable franchise agreements that we have through operators like Comcast and so forth. As people are cutting the cord, so to speak, and as changes are happening at the federal level, the city set out a number of years ago now to enhance the production service side, and so that's what's led to some of this here. And it's really been a major benefit to CTN and to the city that we set out to do that 10 or 15 years ago because of the amount of additional revenue recognition that our studio has because of that.
Thank you. Any other questions or discussion? Hearing none, we have a motion and a second. All in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? And that motion carries. Thank you, Mr. Strauss.
Thank you. Thank you very much.
Next on our agenda is the open mic portion of the meeting. You hung in there. If you could come up and give us your name and address, please, and then limit your remarks to 3 minutes.
Hi. My name's Brandon Basil. I'm back again. I received a letter in the mail the other day from the city manager. It just said that just for informational purposes and nothing's really going to happen unless the city council wishes it to go forward and have council meetings looking into the parking ordinance that I brought up about parking across from private driveways. So I'm just here today. My neighbor Jane would have come with. I told her she didn't have to come with this time, but just to inquire if it is going to move forward at all, if I should keep on coming and keep this going forward, or if it's not of an interest at all and it's just going to be dead in the water and a waste of my time. So that's why just coming here again today just to see if the city council would be interested in looking into this. I believe I did email everybody the other day. Just, okay, thank you.
So it's really important to understand the speed of government first.
Yep.
But stick around and stay tuned, because that's the next item on the agenda, and we'll be talking about it briefly.
Okay,
Yeah.
so I just wanted to, squeaky wheel gets the grease, so I'm here squeaking, so.
So what we're gonna do is the next, you read, as Councilmember Johnson said, the next part of the meeting is I will read the response that you received.
Okay.
And that'll be our opportunity to actually talk about it and see if there's anything that we're gonna move from there. And then you can determine from that if you wanna come back again.
Sounds good. Thank you.
Thank you. Anybody else here to address council for open mic? Seeing none, we'll close that portion of the meeting and move on to item 21, which is the open mic response from Mr. Brandon Basil and Ms. Jane Colpin. Mr. Brandon Basil of 12795 Swallow Street and Ms. Jane Colpin of 12792 Swallow Street appeared at the open mic portion of the February 5th meeting. Mr. Basil questioned a city ordinance that prohibits parking directly across from a driveway and requested the city council consider changing this ordinance. Ms. Colpin is a neighbor of Mr. Basil, also appeared before the city council to support the revision of this ordinance. City Code Section 9-108 Sub 1 Sub B prohibits parking in front of or directly across from a public or private driveway and, except for cul-de-sacs and eyebrows, within 5 feet of either a public or private driveway other than the owner's driveway, as measured along the edge of the roadway from the points of intersection of the outer edges of the driveway, extended through any curb in the edge of the roadway. That was more detail that we needed to put in there, I think. But, okay. The intent of this parking prohibition is to provide for adequate clearance for vehicles to move safely into and out of a driveway. According to the police department, this ordinance is generally only enforced on a complaint basis. This is for informational purposes, and no specific recommendations are being made at this time. And of course, if council would like to discuss any of this, we can open it up for conversation. Councilmember Johnson?
So this, I appreciate the gentleman for coming in and coming back for a response. This causes me to think back when I read this in the agenda to other things that have come before the council where we all look at them and we maybe hear them once or twice and we go, you know what, we should talk about that at a workshop sometime. And one of the more recent ones that I can remember was the whole issue on the rental agreements and certain people being disqualified because of their criminal histories, and we've run into this a few times where they thought they could rent out a house that they used to own or that they own, and then all of a sudden, because of a prior conviction, they find out that they're really not supposed to and they're disqualified. And whether or not we can work out some kind of an ordinance accommodation in certain things or an understanding this is one of them too, where I'd like the input a little bit more from the police department on the enforcement aspect of it, because as it's written here in the summary, it's a complaint-driven process, and so that causes you to be a little concerned about the occasional opportunity for selective enforcement, where it's being enforced in some neighborhoods, and the police are just responding to complaints, and they're doing it in good faith, and it's not being enforced in other places because nobody's complaining. And is there some kind of a process by which you can have it sounds like you have a very cooperative or collaborative neighborhood that is willing to look at this issue, and can we as a city, without creating enforcement problems for the police, find a way to allow certain kind of deviations from these, ordinance enforcement efforts or whatever. And I'd just like to see if there's a way we could get, because I know, Mr. Stemwettle kind of keeps track of these things as they come up from time to time. Could we schedule a workshop where we talk about, possible ordinance changes or things that the council has flagged for further discussion? And that's the idea that I'd like to broach with the council here, so that we can not wait 2 years and then have somebody come in with a similar thing and go, we were going to talk about that. Is there a way that we can get that on an agenda, maybe once a year? And then I would like to see something like this be part of that process.
Councilmember Demmer?
I do agree. I think last time we talked about this, the idea that we have some sort of just larger conversation about the different parking ordinances and if we think they make sense still, and maybe you find new ones to add, maybe find some to take away. But I appreciated the email, because the part where it said that you couldn't find neighboring municipalities that had that same restriction, and so it's not commonly known, and that always makes me a little worried. If we have something that people have to dig through the code to find out, then the first time they find out it's not okay is when they get their ticket. So I don't know, I didn't look through neighboring municipalities, but understanding why we would have something different than the neighbors, and whether that was driven by a problem, or whether, how we ended up with that, and whether that's still valid. Just in general, again, the problem I see is, holistically, there's probably a lot of neighborhoods you can barely park in front of. You can barely park on the road at all, whereas other neighborhoods you can. Ironically, most of the time people come to us, they ask for less parking in their neighborhood, so a little either way. But I thought the letter was a compelling letter that we should take a look at it. So I'd agree.
This actually happened, and it did come up once before when we cut off a lot of accesses to Foley, and we expanded the one thoroughfare through 105th. We prohibited parking because of a turn lane that was going in there for half of the block. Well, the other half of the block had basically driveways that were immediately across from the only yard you could park in. So the effective result of that was we almost eliminated legal parking on the entire street, even though there was a sign that says, no parking here to corner, but it presumed you could park to the other end of the corner, but you really can't. So those situations exist in certain places. So what do we do about that?
And I'm okay having a conversation about it. I think that Coon Rapids has been very deliberate about allowing people to increase the size of their driveways right up to the lot lines, because we don't have sidewalks on most of our streets. And so if you have a lot of on-street parking, now all of a sudden you've got pedestrians and bicyclists that have to get out around the parked cars. And I think we are a little different than a lot of the other communities, because we were built without sidewalks, and the streets are that pedestrian conduit. So I don't mind having a conversation about it.
And it's like Anoka prohibits parking overnight, and we don't in certain times. So every community is different, and they try to figure out what's right for itself. But when these kinds of issues come up from time to time, it'd be nice to have a conversation together about it, as opposed to it just being a response back in an open mic setting.
Yeah. Okay. Any other discussion on this one?
Your Honor, I would just say from my experience, there's far more complaints about people parked across from their driveway than there is, that you can't.
Right.
I mean, lots of complaints about that because it is a safety hazard.
Can I ask a question on that, Steve? Are those complaints usually coming from the homeowner that the car's parked across from, or from other neighbors as a safety concern?
Probably from the homeowner.
Okay. The reason I say that is I would like to workshop it too, because without changing the ordinance or, one way or the other, to Councilmember Johnson's point, if there could be some type of latitude, but for a neighbor's giving permission or something to that effect, I'd love to have the conversation in a workshop, in a more formalized session. I know I brought it up to some of you guys in an informal way, but would like to do that, so.
Kind of seems like we're back to the complaint-driven.
Yeah.
All right. I think we are on to other business. Let me double check. Yes, we are on other business. Other business? Mr. Stemwedel?
Mayor, Council, excuse me if I could, I would like to reintroduce a familiar face, Francine Hansen, who will be joining us now on Tuesday evenings, lucky her. It was announced today that she will be taking the role of finance director. Fran's been with the city for about 14 years now, so certainly she's been a long tenured employee and very dedicated to the city, but now will be stepping into this new role. And so I wanted to congratulate her and introduce her again to you all and to the public, and you'll be seeing a lot more of her going forward.
And I think, Mr. Stemwedel, it's important to point out that that wasn't a gimme. You opened this up to a very large search and had lots of applicants and did lots of interviews.
Mayor, Council, that's correct. Fran had to jump through a lot of hoops to be offered this position. We had about 28 people apply for the job. We interviewed 7 initially, narrowed that down to 3. It was a multi-panel, multi-step interview process, and then Fran won the day.
Excellent, thank you. Congratulations.
Thank you. I appreciate the opportunity. Thank you
I
very
think we
much.
won too.
We won too.
Very nice, thank you.
All right, other business. I have so many notes here. I know I had something else, but I can't find it now.
Mayor?
Councilmember Griscoviac?
Just for Public Works, we've had a lot of plowing this year. We've probably got more plowing coming up tonight, tomorrow. Just wanted to get an update. How's our equipment holding up? Are we doing all right in terms of the equipment? Is our salt stash full still, or what are we doing?
Councilmember Griscoviac, that's a great question. We do get lots of questions. I think the trucks are holding up well. The mechanics are taking great care of it. The issues that are giving us the most problem are the sidewalk machines because of all the extra snow. So you're going from the V-plows to the blowers, and those don't hold up very well, and it takes a lot longer when you're throwing snow versus just pushing snow, breaking through the chunks on all the curves. It's usually several days after the fact, the cold temperatures. So we've been having a little more issues with our sidewalk machines. So coincidentally, we got the newest version in today to demo, and it's a good timing because last time we had one for a demo for like 6 weeks and it didn't snow that whole time. So this one was delivered today, and we'll get it out and give it some fun for the next couple of days. So overall, I think the equipment is holding up well. I think it's just kind of the patience and the morale, not only of crews, but also the residents out there. They're just waiting, I think, for winter to be over, and they want it to stop snowing, and we can't control that. So we'll just keep at it and keep plugging away. So thank you for the question, and thank you for your patience and your understanding for not only you, but all of you at home. We're working hard, and we'll continue. And yep, we'll be out again early tomorrow morning. You'll see us throughout the day, probably hitting one good time right before rush hour and then getting off the road. So while most of the snow will be happening between kind of lunch and dinner time, the residential neighborhoods probably won't be getting plowed until early Thursday morning. So we do get a lot of questions about that. Why aren't you plowing out here in the middle of the night? Well, it's not necessarily the safest environment, and you want to be off the roads when people are commuting. So we'll get our mains in good condition for the morning, get some chemicals down and things. We'll hit them again by the end of the day, and we'll be back into all the residential neighborhoods cleaning things up come Thursday.
Excellent. Councilmember Demmer?
Actually, I have a question for Chief Piper, but I will remind everyone, you don't want snowplow drivers working 18-hour shifts. That's just a really bad idea, so. So Chief Piper, a snow-related question. Hydrants. What would you, do you have any recommendations? I know people are supposed to dig out the hydrant. How wide should they dig them out? What should they do if they see some that aren't dug out? Any thoughts?
Councilmember Demmer and council members, this is a very good question. I appreciate you bringing it up, and we would recommend that people dig them out and 3 feet around them. And just as a point for that, the importance of it is fire doubles approximately every minute. So therefore, if we have, in the case of a structure fire, it's very it's advantageous to the homeowner and to the neighborhood. If we can get at that hydrant right away, we know where it's at, we can hook onto it versus trying to find it and then digging it out. So. And as far as what we recommend is that just neighbors could take turns or whatever and just take care of your own hydrant, and that would be very helpful. So excellent question.
Yeah, I will say that when you have this much snow in a year, the hydrant helps the whole neighborhood. Don't make the guy who owns that corner lot do it every single time. If you're out shoveling, you might as well go out and do it.
Correct.
It's a nice way to share with the neighborhood. I did see one hydrant that was almost completely snowed in that wasn't in a residential area. It was on Coon Rapids Boulevard. So that made me wonder, if people see hydrants where you can only barely see the top of them, should they call somebody, or should they, I mean, I don't know.
Well, our fire, Councilmember Dimmer, our fire marshal is working on that issue and addressing that in the non-residential neighborhoods.
Okay, thank you.
Mr. Piper, while you're queued up over there, I think this is a really good opportunity to let folks know that if they do not have smoke detectors and cannot afford smoke detectors, isn't there some assistance? We just had that fire this weekend. Thank God the people made it out, but it was not because of smoke detectors. It was because they had a dog or pets that woke them up, right?
Correct. Mayor Cook, council members, you're referring to the fire on Hanson Boulevard this past weekend, and that was a real good example. In this case, I was out of town, but as the story goes, the dogs woke them up, and and great that happened. But we actually will tell people is that in most cases the dogs don't wake up either. And I mean, it just happened that it worked out that on that particular occasion. But what we recommend is with smoke detectors is that there's a smoke detector in every sleeping area of every house. They get tested once a month. If they're battery operated, we change the batteries when we change the clocks back and forth for daylight savings time. And the maximum life of them is 10 years, and they should be replaced. And as far as anybody in our city, any resident, not a rental property, but any resident that is unable to afford a smoke detector, if they just call the city, ask for the fire department, the firefighters will come out and install the smoke detectors as needed, free of charge.
And if they're in a rental property, they should call their landlord.
Absolutely.
And if the landlord doesn't come out, then they should call us, right?
Right. Yeah, it's clearly a rental property is a business, and we've taken the position that in that case, the owner of the building should put in smoke detectors. And correct, if a tenant does not have a smoke detector or has one that's not working, they should contact the property owner.
Yep. All right. Thank you. I have one other really big question, though. Mr. Anderson, what's going on out at the golf course? I saw people cross-country skiing and enjoying the simulator room. What else is going on, or what's going on out there?
Mayor, Council, you covered a bunch of it. So the snow is not making me super happy because I'm the golf guy and I'm excited to get outside and I'm excited to have all those people come and golf. But to your point, the cross-country skiing in Bunker Hills Regional Park is glorious, and the Anoka County Parks handles that, and the trail access is on the golf course, and lots of folks are taking them up on that and having a great time out there. But there is a lot still happening at Bunker Hills. The Simulator Center, so indoor golf, is open and will remain open until the summer season starts. Memberships and patron cards are on sale now, so we're seeing all of our golfers return, sporadically over the course of the days to purchase those as they're gearing up and getting ready for the eventual beginning of the outdoor season. And coming up on March 1st, we have a father-daughter dance, which is a very popular event that started last year to rave reviews. So there are still tickets available for that at bunkerhillseventcenter.com.
Excellent. Yeah, I saw some real nice pictures, people out skiing and then enjoying Kendalls, and I thought, boy, that's just a great compliment. So, other business?
Mayor?
Councilmember Griscoviac?
Notice on the city calendar that there's an open house tomorrow, real estate equities on the apartment project that's being proposed over there. tomorrow night, 5 to 6 p.m. Doesn't sound like the weather conditions are going to be very good for that, but I'd encourage.
5 to
folks
6
in
or
the-
5 to 6:30? Yeah, 5 to 6:30.
And that's here?
Down in the,
Civic Center, okay.
yeah. Yeah, good catch.
Cross-country ski to it.
All right. Other business?
Move to adjourn.
Second.
Motion by Johnson, second by Demmer to adjourn. All in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Aye, we're adjourned.